And that's the same when you're looking at AI. Make sure you're the one making AI understand exactly what you want from it, not believing what it gives back to you. I think it's very interesting that DEI is seen as a negative. Like
That's
many businesses are like, if you can just give me 5,000, if you can just give me 10,000, that can help me start up. I mean, the startup businesses fail because of access to cash flow initially.
With me today, I have Kimberly Erwin. She's an executive director at OneUniversal Media. She's also an author, a radio show host, an entrepreneur, and today we'll take a deep dive into the moving parts of a small business and what really is a small business, a startup, and all those terms. Kimberly, how are you feeling today?
I feel awesome. Thanks for having me, Zivco.
That's right, fantastic. Now, we talked a little bit off camera about some of the stuff about small business. Now, let me start first. How did your journey begin into going into a small business? How were the beginnings, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, thanks for bringing that up, because I think I'm like most people, and we kind of start a business because we are looking for something that we need and we can't find it. And so we go, hey, this is possible. So back in 2020, was it 2020 where COVID hit?
Yes.
Maybe it was around COVID. I had a book to publish, and we published the book right before they put us all under lock and key. I had set up ways of marketing, like taking my book, which is a children's book on how to overcome racism, to the Children's Book Festival, which is a major children's book festival in Hudson, New York. That was canceled. All of the festivals were canceled. Marketing, not available. So what do? I had to go online. I went online to find out. I found tools that helped me. I found other people who also needed the help with the tools. And so I decided to start something called AIBoss.us, which provided tools for other people like me who now needed to work on our own to get our product out there and our, successful marketing for ourselves and our products. So that's kind of how I started the journey. At the time, I also was a radio host, and I brought on a lot of people who now had to stay at home. So many of these small business, or we call them small business people or entrepreneurs, sought, this type of marketing. So they came on the show, we talked. And so I got a really good rapport with them. And not that they were the only ones I ever had on my show, but I kept a good foundation with them. And so as things came to my purview, I started to share that with them. And so then under an umbrella called OneUniversal Media, not only did we now add the products that we were servicing, but also now let's bring them on and to help them marketing themselves. So something like what you're doing now, helping me market myself in my journey, we did it with them, but locally, more or less. And that's how OneUniversal Media became OneUniversal Media as a platform. And now we've just changed that platform a little bit because we want to include all of New York and then also international people who I have learned about or who I have met through many of the auspices of having collaboratives and other webinar types of experiences. So, no one wants to be left out. So I was like, okay, let's put on the tent. And so I actually created a tent called IAMP, Intercultural Connect Academy and Media Platform, which now takes the AI Boss US, bringing in the technology, the SaaS tools for small business entrepreneurs who, they can't achieve success because they don't have a lot of funds working right now. But so to get these tools to really work for them to get entrepreneur status, they would have to pay hundreds of dollars a month for that type of tool. And people don't have it. And if you get the free version or the tier 1 version of a lot of these software tools, then it doesn't really do as much for the business and for the person who's using it. So that's why I said, membership has its advantages. We can do together. So we have the tools, we have the media outlook, and now we have the community. So people, it gets tough out here. It gets tiring, especially right now. I know you're going to go into talking about DEI, but we're coming under assault in a way. This is not in my opinion, the administration in the United States to help forward small business owners. And I mean small business owners.
That's right. Now, couple of things that you mentioned there that I wanna cover first. It sounds like you're saying there is an opportunity for small businesses, and we'll get into that term a little bit later, to stay ahead or put up a fight in essence with some technology because some of the stuff, the funding, all these things are not so available. How do you see the people you work with adapting and using, especially AI nowadays, to stay ahead and build their business?
Well, this is really where I see a difference in
Hmm.
many people. I think people's values inform their software tool. And we're trying hard to have people understand that AI, because AI is taking away so many people's positions and jobs in corporate America, and so many small business owners actually also have a step in the either corporate area or working for a government agency or some other small business so that they can also maybe achieve uh, what do you call it, to have health insurance, so some other needs met. So not everyone who has a small business only operate through their small businesses. They might have a foot in both ways. So some people don't use AI like ChatGPT or Gemini because they just don't find that it's a value, or they don't find it's authentic. And we like to let people know, if you don't use a tool, you can make every tool authentic to you, right? I mean, a car is not authentic. We're not walking. We do buy cars so we can get to A and B faster. And then we make it our own, so to speak. We accessorize it to how we feel comfortable. So that's where I'm trying to bring in small business owners who aren't either literate with AI because they just don't want to know, or they don't have the time to be literate with AI. And basically, there's so much software out there, and everything is projecting AI as this negative influence on you. So I'm there to say it's there, operate it, use it, get from A to B like you would a car. You're not walking. You're utilizing another service, another tool to help you get to where you need to be. And we, as small business owners without major staff, how else are we supposed to fight with the big guys, right? We have something, either a service or a tool or a product that we really think that can help members of our community or larger. And in order to advertise that, to market that, we need to have other tools so that while we're sleeping, this information is getting to where it needs to go, or this tool is getting to where it needs to go. So I think it's very highly useful. I use it. I've actually made it my own, so to speak. So when I talk to it, it almost talks back like me.
Right. Yes.
And that's a little scary. But yeah, you have to learn how to drive a car. The first time I got in to drive a car, my mother told me specifically, Kim, when she got me on the highway, make sure you drive the car and don't let it drive you. And that's the same when you're looking at AI. Make sure you're the one making AI understand exactly what you want from it, not believing what it gives back to you.
Got it. It's a very interesting perspective, comparing it to a car, something we use every day that, not too long ago wasn't a normal thing. And you're saying you are the one that drives the AI as opposed to it taking you where it wants it to go. And it does feel scary. Like yesterday, I had a call with one of my clients, and he's in sales, and they're developing an AI voice agent. And some of his employees are on the call. He's like, "Look, I know it's scary. I know it sounds like it's going to take jobs, but if we just put our blinds." It will still happen. It's like we're not the only one developing. There's so many that are way, way better. Like 11 Labs, the way they would clone a voice, the way that it sounds, is like it's just you need to change. You need to change what you do. Maybe before you were the person picking up the phone and calling. Now you will not be that. You will be something else involved in the process, and it feels scary because you don't know how and where it will go. Now, some small businesses do kind of fully adapt and use it because it does give you a leg up. Before you had to have like a bunch of, like, I'll say for myself, I don't need a video editor. There's two, three tools that I can combine together, and one person can do that does something else on top of what we already do. And this is where things start to become really, you augment the job, and you make it and you use it, because when you're a small business, you want to work your way up how to get to the next step. Now, we keep using this word and we keep saying we'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. A small business. What is a small business in today's time?
Well, I will enjoy talking about that. I just want to make one reference to what you mentioned. There was a cart and buggy, right? Before there was a car, and there were people actually saying that the car would be a fad. It would go away. And like you said, look at how far we've come. In fact, now they're looking at flying cars, right? So it's either going to another level. So people should understand that's AI. And when we look at, and everything needs to change. So not just tools, but language. I mean, before I was my own business entrepreneur, business owner, I was an English teacher. I taught English at high schools and at universities and colleges, and to people who spoke English as a second language. So I was very diverse in everything. So one thing that I know, and that's why I wanted to make that statement, because when I tell you about small business, we need to change that terminology. We need to change the term as we change. I'm just giving statements that I found that 99.9% of all US businesses are supposed to be employing half of the private workforce. So when they say, what are these businesses? They're saying they're small businesses. Now, it's great to say that the majority of small businesses are the ones that hire people. But when you look at what they consider small business, then you go, oh, well, that makes sense. I mean, 500 employees is the cap on what small business is. So if you have 499 employees, you can still claim yourself to be a small business. Now, that means in America anyway, that government set-asides are for you. And how is a person competing with a small business with 400 plus employees if they have 2 or 1? They're still considered small business. So we need to make a change in that. And we're starting. I mean, I know that in New York State, for example, the Small Business Association is advocates are looking to say, hey, we need to make this change. And we can make this change. We can be, because the majority of us really aren't small businesses from 300 to 500 employees. We're underneath that. We're the majority. And so for us, we have, like you said, size on our side. And so we need a term. I think people are using micro businesses because, again, revenue, you can make about $5 million a year and still be considered small business. And there are small businesses that are pre-revenue. There's small businesses that make $10,000 or less a month. I know for ICAMP purposes, Intercultural Connect Academy and Media Platform, one of the reasons why I started that is to really help those on the lower end of the side. So we say, if you are earning over $10,000 a month, maybe our tent isn't for you. You can afford to obtain the higher SaaS software. You can afford having that employee, that virtual assistant that, is with you, virtual assistant that with you all the time, or your own assistants in your home, or you might have, can go other places and bring and then hire staff so that when you go to those locations, they're on site. But for many of us, that's not a real possibility. So how do we then utilize what's available to us? Where's the funding that is available to smaller businesses? Because once a statement goes out with small business funds are available, especially looking at COVID, going back to COVID allowed for small businesses to accept funds and that they didn't even have to pay back grants, in fact, to help keep their business intact. Many people, I know a restaurant owner in Brooklyn, she had employees, she had about 12 employees, she had a physical location, And by the time that the information got to her and she was able to put together all those documentations that she would need to be able to assess the fund or access the funding, it was no more left. And what happened? Well, other smaller businesses that had more revenue a year, had larger staff. In fact, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, I think, had like 8 to 15 restaurants in New York State alone. And they asked for the funds and they received the funds. And then they found that they didn't need the funds and they just sat on the funds. And so another restaurant, mom and pops, they couldn't make it. And again, this needs to really change in order for small businesses to stay or to become and to stay viable and to then, help employ people that, will pay taxes and then give back to the government, because isn't that what it's all about for us to give out and take? There should be a smaller pie for this smaller group of people or ownership.
It feels like you're saying in this world, someone that is 12 employees and 400, they're put in the same group and treated the same way, where in reality they live a completely different world. They have different obstacles they need to overcome in the day. They work with completely different revenues. Like one is aspirational for one, and the other one is like basically a nightmare if they go into that direction. And there needs to be a new position, what is truly a small business. And I do agree with that statement, because when I work with clients, some will say, we're looking for like mid-market, like 75 million. I was like, that's mid-market?
Yes. And banks don't even want to give money to you if you need less than $250,000. Like many businesses are like, if you could just give me 5,000, if you could just give me 10,000, that can help me start up. I mean, the startup market, the startup businesses fail because of access to cash flow initially. And initially, we don't need hundreds of thousands of dollars, because we don't have, we can operate in smaller spaces, right? We can operate from our home. We can operate from a community share office location. We don't need our own built buildings. So a lot of the funding for upstarts, like if you have a restaurant, it's to, bring in furniture and, all of that other stuff. And that costs a lot of money. And that's $250,000, like kind of revenue, money that you then need to borrow. So then banks are like, yeah, we can, give you that, because we could see a return on our investment. But for smaller businesses where it's, information or services that we're providing, we don't need that much upfront to get started. And so where do we turn to ask for that kind of money? Banks are not giving us $10,000 to start our businesses. They don't see the value and a return on that. So we're already finding that there are opportunities for smaller business to access funds like this, but we're still called small business, again, by the government. We need to be called micro businesses. So then when there's an advocacy can be then done on this particular group of business owners. And that's really so that maybe banks do open up and have a not small business area, but a micro business area also. So now we can go and access funds from in general in our local areas, instead of going online and trying to compete with other national and international people, business owners, for that same, international given funds. I think, can't recall the name of one right now, but there's some grants that if you need money, that you can then apply for this on this online site, and then they ask their people to provide money to you, and then so that's great because it's there, but it's convoluted, right? Yeah. You kind of just want to walk into some place that's in your neighborhood, sit down, talk to a representative, and get some funding. And we talk AI or not walk in, but just, this is where my money is. So this is where I would like to bank. And so it's not accessible right now.
It's, and I want to continue on this conversation on this path, because a lot of people may not know this, but when someone I remember I had this conversation yesterday with one of my clients. when a company like doubles, triples overnight, they usually acquire another company. They don't really do that well in business to be like, we are so good at marketing, we like tripled. No, they acquired a couple of companies and that's where they grew. How does that happen? Very rarely, sometimes yes, but most of the time is with borrowed money. It's with like they raise capital, C funding, B funding,
Yes.
some other ways. So I want to continue on this path because what you're trying to say is those groups were put with the same groups together that we have no way to get that capital to be considered a small business to see that exponential growth. We play on the same rules, but we don't have the same access. And if we put a micro business labeling, the funding we need to get, because these guys get the funding. Like that's kind of how it kind of spirals. Like Lovable is the company that is today, not because we're selling so much. Yes, that's one part. Also the funding and also the raising of the funds. So if we go down this path, do you have an idea of how does a micro business look like? What are some of the guardrails, let's just say, we put around to say this would be a micro business? And because you say that some of this is kind of developed already in New York State.
Well, thanks for asking me about that. I just want to just go back because I made some statements I wasn't sure of, but I found that some of the funding companies are Fundbox. It's one of them. They give funding up to $150,000. So I just wanted to throw out some actual name of an opportunity for maybe your listeners if they're interested. So if I can recall the question, it's how do we, what are we if we call ourselves micro businesses?
Yes, how do we define that?
Well, we can talk about revenue earning, or revenue growth, and we can talk about employees. I think we can then also talk about exactly how we look for our customers. I think that's maybe really credible because some small business owners, like a person who's cutting your hair, right? You mentioned how many of them, if they're going to start a business, they might buy a business. So many of them do exactly that. They buy, there's a hair salon on the corner and that person goes out of business. In fact, I'm saying that because mine did. They literally not went out of business. She said no more. She was at a certain age and she said no more. Yeah. But those are really small businesses, right? Because they employ maybe 3 or 4 people in their shop. And sometimes they're not employed by them. They just rent out space.
Yes.
And then, so there's a lot of different ways of, operating a business. And in that case, she's still the only employee and now she has this location. But what is she going to do when she leaves? How, who's going to purchase her building? Now she needs a lawyer. So people who are small businesses tend not to have the, can't think of the word, but the services around them that they need, the legal services, the financial services we've already talked about, but you need the legal services. If you do have an employee, you need to know the state rules and regulations for providing for that employee, taxing, tax, you need an accountant, you need so many service people. So for those people who don't have their own person that they can pick up and call, that's also one way of identifying a smaller business. They're not in-house. Bigger businesses, they have their legal department, their financial department. We have ourselves, and usually we're making the decisions and doing a lot of that type of stuff on our own and then going to other small businesses to utilize their services. So small businesses tend to use other small businesses to help service them. So that's another way of looking at a small business. And I think also in marketing, small businesses tend to market local. And so I don't know if that fully answers your question in the way you're seeking, but for small business, if we're going to be an advocate for small businesses, we definitely have to state the 3 things that are most important. Access to capital. It needs to not be in competition with larger organizations or businesses. And that means that they can't have there needs to be a revenue differentiation, and there needs to be a employee differentiation, because I think there should be some rules also that govern smaller or micro businesses so that we don't have the need to hire staff to help us pay our employees. Right now, many of us are doing, contract labor because we just don't have the rigmarole to really answer the questions that the government is asking us to provide this stuff yearly or sometimes monthly for them. That would just shut us down totally and completely. And that's why a lot of these businesses are cash businesses. Yeah. You know, like the hairstylist people, they're cash businesses because they just don't want to deal with the government and the rules and regulations associated with getting paid on paper. And we all know that when you get paid on paper, that's when you get paid the big bucks. You know, when you file taxes and you want to get a loan, if you don't file taxes, you don't have a bank giving you a loan. So so those are ways to decipher what's a small business or micro business.
And to that, I would just add, I think revenue around like the 10,000 per month roughly would be kind of the medium, maybe, because I agree. When we look at employees, the moment you cross 7, 8, you start to hire someone to manage. The moment you cross 15, you already have like 2 or 3 people that manage, they help, because it just becomes too convoluted. And at that point, you still do hire other small businesses. That might be a bookkeeper, that might be an accountant, that might be a lawyer that is based on something and not really like working for you 24/7. So you still outsourcing those things. You tend to market local, because if you expand it to like nationwide, you have a budget issue. Like there's just no way to cover that much the numbers that you need to spend. It doesn't make sense at that point. And the access to capital, you don't want to be in the same position where someone has $500,000 for a loan. You're like, no, I need like 50K. It will get me to where I want to be. That's all that I really need for right now, because I just have a vision. And then maybe we'll launch across a specific need, and then we talk again about that. Now,
and the thing about that too is they'll give you that. They'll do something like a personal loan, or they'll do a loan. Like if you have a business account at a bank, they will give you access to credit, but it's usually at a more exorbitant interest rate than if it was a larger amount of money. So, you're being combated over and over when you operate in a range that the government itself doesn't even recognize as being any different than a larger small business.
Now, I'm happy that we're doing this, so that it's very clear for everybody to like, okay, this is potentially how a micro business would look like, and kind of what are the stuff that we're trying to advocate for. When we're looking at another term that has been used all over the place, startup. What is a startup in today's time by the stuff that you're seeing?
Well, I work for or I should say, my business works with a large marketplace for SaaS tools, and startup obviously in technology may look a little bit differently, or they definitely have different terminology for what they're going through. But I'm using the term beta right now, which is the tech term with my business. A startup is basically that you are within, I would say, 3 years. Some people think, startup is the first couple of months, but it can be the first couple of years of a startup. So usually during that time period, you're wanting to have revenue to support yourself, but normally that doesn't usually occur when you're a startup. You have to have the product first and then build marketing, and then so much output before you get the input, or the input can I guess will keep you in the black. Am I using that term right? Yes. I'm still not the financial terminology person, but anyway, so yeah, during that period of time, when after your idea, right, you have your idea, you have your service, or the first product is ready to be shipped out, you're still small business. I mean, not small business, you're still in the startup phase. I would look to see when your finances, when your output is less than the amount you're getting in revenue. That, I think, is about the time when you can claim that you're no longer a startup. And the government itself, they give you 3 years to show tax, like a write-off in a sense, where you are earning less money than you are putting out. So you can have deductions, large deductions. But after 3 years, the government says, if you're still not making any money, if you still don't have a great revenue growth, then we're going to consider you a hobby. You do hair, but you're not showing that you're the amount of customers you're having can actually help you afford the upkeep of the salon. And this is your third year, then you're just cutting people's hair for fun. And, it's just what you like to do for your neighbors. And of course, you may still be considered a business on your own, but now the government will not allow you to do those deductions. And that's another reason why advocacy needs to happen with changing the terminology, and not just, words, but actually what does the government need to do to, in effect, help smaller businesses keep showing a loss, and then maybe their fourth or fifth year, because we're smaller, right? So we have different needs and then larger small businesses. Because if you're just one person, or if you're one person with a few outsourced professionals, it still takes now even more time. And if you're not receiving grants or funding from outside sources, a lot of the smaller tech startups, one of the reasons they look for funding is they also look for people with knowledge, so they could help propel them into the revenue making space that much quicker. So some people don't really need the money, they need the expertise. That's why people buy businesses as opposed to start them on their own, because the startup phase is harrowing. And that's when most businesses obviously fail.
It's definitely, I'll speak for myself. Like when I started, it was not what I had in mind. It was maybe some principle of having the time that I want with my family. Like eventually to be like, if I want to go to my daughter's school play, I don't need to say to anyone, I'm gonna take a day off. I'll just take the day off. I go there, enjoy the day, come back. If my wife wants for us to take a day off together, sure, I'll drop the kids at my parents' place. Let's go enjoy an evening or something. That was like the principle. But what happened in that how you get to a regular place, I would say, with small business is definitely like a huge challenge, and it's not what we have in mind in the beginnings.
Well, to that note, one of the things that I thought the same. In fact, I worked for small business owners. I worked for like micro small business owners, and I wanted to be just like them. So I had a knowledge of what that would look like. But until you are them, until you are your own, you don't really understand that you are always having to do your schedule based on somebody. If it's not your boss, it's your customer, it's your client. So you might think that you have more of the time for yourself, but if you're really in business, especially during that startup phase, to put out your service, to put out your product, to be the best in your area, then you don't have that kind of time. You really just don't, right?
There's sacrifices that we didn't know that have to happen. And then once you go through a period of doing it, then you're like, if I want to go to the next level, do I want those sacrifices? Because there needs to be different sacrifices, and it's not always what we see the video on YouTube of, overnight I made 2 million and now I'm 26 and I'm making 50,000 a day. Like you start to understand, if you're doing this for a long term, like, no, that person made sacrifices that I don't want to make. That doesn't correlate to success. It's just a different life.
Exactly. And I like that you said that, because I was watching, especially YouTube video mavens, or people who are doing it up, they do it often, right? Whatever you do, whatever you want to be successful at, you have to do it a lot. And not everyone is going to make it to the NFL, to the NBA, to the big leagues. You can do it every day, and then you're not going to be the person receiving thousands of dollars from your YouTube channel. However, what I always say, you're a success because you've achieved the knowledge, right? You achieved something, the ability, whatever you've done, you've achieved something that now you can share that with others in some way or form. But you may not want to quit your day job. That's why a lot of successful people, I know people who are earning over $10,000 a month, and they haven't quit their day job. They're like, no, because you don't know. You can make $10,000 a month for 3 years, and then something like AI can come and take your job away.
it's
You have to pivot, keep pivoting. It's
yeah, you
always a
have to
pivot.
keep it's a specific person that you either are or you are willing to become. I wouldn't say that everybody is built to be entrepreneur. I would always label it like that. You either are or you're willing to become that person where the changes don't feel scary. When you are
Mhm.
in SEO and someone says that SEO is dead and you hear that for like 6 months and you live in that world, you're not afraid to make the change. You know what you need to do and you'll be fine. Otherwise, it's good to be as a side gig or something because you're still learning and exploring without having the fear like, look, I just lost the whole income because the landscape completely changed in my industry. And I do want to show that as a regular thing. People do it all the time. It's not black or white. It's not this or that. There is this gray where people micro businesses. There's different people are happy and successful, and it's very real and exists for a lot of people. Um, some of the
And I
stuff
want
that
to, oh,
yeah,
sorry. No, I was
go
just
ahead.
going to say, we're on Zoom. Zoom was in 20, I keep saying 2020. I don't know if it's 2020, 2021. Zoom was not much, known
Yeah,
about, but because of what happened with COVID, a situation that this tech company could not have foreseen,
yeah,
they became the go-to place for communication. And so that tool skyrocketed, not really, well, one could say it was good management because it could have also not, it could have been some other tool, but you don't own that. You can only own what you do. And yeah, if your values change or if, your desire about something changes in how you want to market or how you want to take your service, if that changes and you're no longer happy with what you do, you might have to pause it or pivot it. And either just like people who go to school, sometimes they're like, oh, they're at this school and they're like, it wasn't the college campus I thought it was going to be like, or it wasn't the classwork I wanted. So they have to take a pause or a pivot. No one's going to blame anyone for pausing and pivoting. So I wouldn't want to say that's not being successful. That's just really taking that pause to realize who you are and what you need, because you only have so much energy and you have to put that energy in what matters and making sure that it's possible for you to continue to live life. Like people are saying, life be life in. You want to be able to continue to live life. And it can be very stressful and daunting, but it could obviously also allow you to go to your child's dance recital without, feeling guilty or not having enough hours
yes,
to do
yes,
stuff.
absolutely. And I think these struggles we rarely see them, and because no one talks about them. Someone I think it was a couple of days ago, I was watching a podcast and they were like, you're seeing, I think it was the author of the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F-bomb. He was saying you see a highlight of the extreme and the most successful. But that's just the highlight because you're scrolling through social media, you're listening to YouTube. No one shows you like 15 years of God knows what happened, or the lawsuits, or the losses, or the backstabs, or the bankruptcies. You don't see those things. You just see a highlight reel of success, 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 or the extreme, like massive failures. But in the middle, there's the normal that most of us kind of live, and it
Mhm.
has a lot of struggles. Now, I wanted to ask you, do you see, or what are some of those struggles that you see that maybe minorities are having when it comes to access to the right business information to be successful?
Well, as a person of color, guess one could say that my skin's a little bit darker hue than most, or the not most, because actually people are saying, well, it's not people are saying, it's true. What in America we consider of color is the majority of the population, world's population. Because when you look at India and when you look at China, billions of people in their nations, then so I think it's very interesting that DEI, diversity, equity, inclusivity, and then they had the B for belonging, it's seen as a negative. And in the workplace, in arts and culture, just in society in general in the United States, it's a backlash. I think for that very reason I just made a statement of. In America, color has been made important, more important than your culture. and that's historical, right? And it started, well, some people say racism in itself started back in Europe, but I think wherever you have people who are different from one another and they want to put the blame because of fear or any other reason on the other, that's what racism is. I mean, we can call it any ism, but because in America, we define it as being of color, since we have the history of slavery, then we define it that way. But I think the people people with power right now, the majority of power in the United States are one would call white, right? White-skinned, white nationality, white, historically advantaged. So in the United States. And so because we're a place with many different immigrants from all over the place, they don't see that, right? They don't even understand that, and they discount it, and they have that ability, rightly so. But our government doesn't. Our government still makes you check a box. When you're owning anything, when they're giving you any kind of funding, they want you to check a box. And before, checking a box was a value because they wanted to help people be in the mix of things. They wanted to see diversity elements because, again, with arts and culture and sports and thought processes, you know, the more diverse you have it, the better you're going to be for it. And that's why I think America became that shining country on the hill, because we invited people from all over with every skin tone and nationality and cultural disposition. But it's a backlash on that. And so whenever we see people in places of power and in America, and they have some color or even right now gender, our national government is looking at that as suspect. So when you look at corporations who might be benefiting from services and products coming from smaller businesses, like if you have a tech company and you want to have a corporation or even a government organization look at that, being able to check that box saying you're an owner and you are, you know, of a different nationality or not different nationality, a different ethnicity than one that normally would get that sale or, you know, get that meeting, right? So you want to show that you're meeting with people of different ethnicities. You no longer have to do that. So it's kind of like freeing to people saying, oh, we don't have to adhere to diversity or equity, inclusivity, the guidelines. So then we're freer to be ourselves. But the reason why it was put in was because it was recognized that the more diverse you are, the better you are. If you see people of many different ethnicities and groups and from different spaces, then you'll be more allowed better to prosper. Because if you're just looking at one corner, when that corner goes off and does something amazing, you're not part of it. And we can look at that with looking at China as a nation. China with technology, China with AI, they're gone and, you know, gotten bigger. And America is still trying to like figure out who owns this and and what's better than this. And really, when you look at major tech companies, white males, period. And so diversity is if you're bringing people, women, people of color, people of different, you know, people who live in the city, people who live in the country, you know, just difference, then all of those together, you can build something great and special. And being that now companies are lax on having to even show that they're meeting with people of different ethnic groups, then if I have a business and you have a business and that person has a business, I can now really only see the person that I feel comfortable with, and even not even letting you know about these opportunities is a possibility too. And no one's going to confront me on it because it's no longer a written rule for it. And so programs are being scaled back with DEI, and we just really have to learn how to deal with it. I think we are dealing with it because we're talking about it in communities, especially if you look on LinkedIn, right? There's still communities where people are talking about diversity, equity, inclusivity. And so taking away the term or making it seem negative when it's not doesn't really change the idea that people of all different ethnicities, persuasions, we're still going forward. We're still taking that leap forward, and we're just forcing you to now to deal with us. So I think there's still some time to see what corporations and government agencies are doing to still be in in compliance with the administration's open guidelines, I should say, if I'm trying to be nice. But I think they're recognizing that if you don't bring in different elements for success, if you don't hire, if you don't allow to the table some of these people and places, they're just not going to be there. We're going to go to China. We're going to go to Africa. Africa's developing these cars. They're amazing. So America, it can't digress. It has to still be able to compete, and maybe without the moniker of DEI, but something else, because we're here and we're all very talented. And so we have a large pool and it should be utilized.
It feels like you're saying there, even if you remove the term DEI, it's the principle behind it that you're saying if you have a diverse place of work, culture, it's a prosperous one. Remove the term, call it whatever you want, but the principle behind it. And to me, it sounds like before, the opportunities were not there. Through the DEI programs, the opportunities were placed, like you were saying, like the checkbox. It was placed so that you should try. Just talk with someone, change that. You don't just work with one company or 5 companies. Try to work with different ones and give it a shot. You will see that the more diverse, the more prosperous your corporation and small businesses and communities would be, regardless of what the term it might be that you use at the end of the day. And to me, it feels like you're saying just diversity is prosperous. Depending what do you call it, doesn't really change. If you have a diverse place, you will see prosper, because if you look at across the board, what works the most is a place with like a lot of ideas. It doesn't matter about ethnicity or color, it's about the diversity. And not having that
I would say it does matter in the sense that you can visibly see color.
Right. Yeah.
But because someone is a color doesn't make them better or worse than, right? I'm not going to not hire someone because of their color. I'm not going to hire someone because of their color. But I do want a large swath of difference and diversity. And so if I have some people that look all the certain way, or they may all then come from a certain place, and that's not something I want. I might have to switch up. You know, if I have, like, I think one of the problems with Elon Musk was saying he needed people coming from Asia because they had the talent and the ability to do the technology that he needed on the computer. I thought that was very interesting, because it's like, okay, so how do you develop that talent within, right? So, but then you have to pull, there's just not enough white people to pull away. So you need to then pull from every place and teach everybody. And so that's kind of what the DEI started as. It's just like, don't look outwards, look inwards. You know, if there's not someone in your community, look outside your community, and then, you know, build that bridge that way. Don't try to go all the way over there to pull somebody where you can just really have access to great people right where you are. If you train people, you know, where they are, take people where they are. Don't use their culture, their color, their language to stifle your ability to want to use them. As a English as a new language teacher, they changed it. They changed language from English as a second language to English as a new language. But we have a lot of influx of people whose English is not their first language. You know, it's a different language. So we teach them English so that they can then utilize their skills for everyone. So we don't then say, hey, you were an immigrant, so now, you know, we don't want immigrants. No, you know, we're saying, we know you don't have this ability, so we want to train you on that ability, because we do want you on the table, because your knowledge from where you came from is going to be that much great. We're going to be that much grateful for it, because we don't have that. You know, you don't have the knowledge that I have being in my ethnic group, and you might want that at the table. So when you're making decisions for everyone, and we can see why that's so wonderful when we look at marketing. You look at advertising now, you have people of the rainbow. So yeah. I don't want to say color doesn't matter. Color doesn't matter in the ability of a person, right? But I think looking at a diverse group of people immediately lets you know that you matter, mm-hmm. and that you're welcomed.
That's right.
And that's important in your business. I'm not going to give money to a business where I don't feel that I matter. And so I think that's what a lot of people are seeing now, that they're trying to showcase. But we don't want to just do it for color, right? We don't want to just say, I need a Black person, I need a person that looks Asian, a person that looks Latino.
Yeah, I think
from the Middle East. We want people of all the everywhere. We want everyone, but yeah, I guess you know
I,
what I'm saying.
you're absolutely right. Because what I wanted to say is like I think for me personally, like it was the first time when I was hiring, that's when you really start to see because it's not it's different when you talk about it and if you have like these debates and how you feel about it and think about it. It's different if you put yourself in on the other side, not the one that is being hired, but the one that is hiring. How do you behave? How do you treat? You have you have 50 resumes, you just see names. Do you start to hone in into, oh, like that guy has SKI, like my last name? I'll interview that person first because I have some. Or do you start to look at capabilities and you're just looking at capabilities and you're starting to put the pieces to the puzzle? I think this is a fantastic opportunity. Let me interview this person, interview that person, interview. And for me, that was the first time I was like, I understand what it means because you just want to say to the hiring person, the HR person, you just can't go with what you feel comfortable. Look at the capabilities and skip over what the name might sound like because at the resume level, you don't see anything more than just a name and maybe start to pull the piece to the puzzle of school education. Look at the capabilities. And then once you have the interview, look past of how a person looks like. Still stick and focus on, will this person bring a different perspective of what I need in the business? And are they more than capable? And like you were saying, it's not just a checkbox. It's more of removing those. And that was at least my
Barriers, the
yes, that was
barriers.
my experience of like remove the I feel comfortable with someone with an Eastern European name because that's where I'm from. Let's remove that. Let's hire someone. I had someone from Jamaica, had someone from Morocco. You start to notice it's just about a different perspective and the capabilities. You're like, that person is fantastic, and hire that person. There's no need to be checkboxing or staying comfortable within one place. And in a way, you're saying that because that is kind of quote unquote removed, it doesn't feel inclusive. It feels like, oh, now you have a very legit excuse to stick where you're comfortable. Is that kind of what you're seeing right now in the landscape?
Um, it's again for me, it's kind of too soon to tell how what I'm
Mhm.
saying, but I'll just go from my own perspective. I almost feel guilty even stating this, but I have a show called Race Talks on, and I want you on still.
Yes.
Ha ha ha.
Yes.
I want a Canadian, but I'm just looking at my understand my what I've gone through. I try to recognize different times of the year, like we have National Heritage Months, right?
Mhm.
So I want to bring on people who represent those Heritage Months so that people who are listening could get an understanding of who these people are, especially if it's not in their space. And I've been finding in year 6 that I am in that I'm more exhausted at trying to go through leaps and bounds as I get more cocooned into the business mode. I'm also finding that I'm only seeing people who are more like me, Black women. I'm really around Black women. And to try to get more knowledge about what's going on in the community, being in that group is helpful because that group, Capital Women Professional Group, they have people from all over, from government, from corporate, and if you want something, it's good to know people in that group. So I want to be in that group, and if I only have so much time, I don't have time now to be in that other group I was in. So if I can only choose one group, I've chosen that group to forward my business to get, and then I'm finding it's harder to get people now on the show because I'm not everywhere I used to be too. So now I have to make a concerted effort, like to hunt down people in Canada and beg them to be on my show because I just don't readily meet so many people anymore. But it's my intention
Hmm.
that makes a difference, right? So now I have that intention that it's not easy now. So do I just stop and change my show?
Yeah.
Or do I now make more of an effort to make it happen? And so I have to make more of an effort. And I'm saying, I now know it's not comfortable. It's not easy. It's not comfortable. And I could totally understand why the other side don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But I also know that I can't keep my show Raise Talks if it doesn't happen.
Right.
I'm not authentic in what I'm stating if I now don't do it. So it's like we said in the beginning of the show, it may not be easy. There might be challenges, but challenge is good. Life be lifing, but we keep rising to the occasion. And I think for that reason, I would say that if I'm a part of it, we all are recognizing that we all have to do more, not just people who have gotten an advantage from that, from being a Black woman at this time. I have an advantage, or I did before recently. A lot of Black women their jobs have been, gone. So we have a huge African American women out of work now, like over, I think they were saying 300,000 women because of this new administration cutting out a lot of the government positions and stuff. But so, it changes. So we have to pivot and try to figure it out. And we are doing that. I think we are very much capable to accept the challenge and to go forward. Just like Zoom. We'll be Zooming one day.
Fantastic. Kimberly, if someone listens to this and they say that's amazing, I want to be part of this group, how do people get a hold of you to work with you?
Well, the best way to know for sure is KimberlyErwin.me, M-E, because if you can, access that information, you pretty much, my website, you could probably, figure out ways of connecting with me. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, and I don't want to give out my email address because I don't want it overflowing, but you know it.
Yeah.
So if you want to be on race talks or anything like that, definitely converse with me through KimberlyErwin.me. And if we work together, then you'll have my more ways of connecting.
Absolutely. Kimberly, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate all of this, and I wish you all success.
Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.